Crazy Ex from Hell, episode 4. This episode is gonna be a doozy. We left off in the last episode with me following Quinoa into the gates of hell, even though there was a knife on the ground covered in blood, and he asked me if I was a screamer when I was scared. Despite both of those weird things happening at the beginning of this date, it was actually like a really good date. And listen, I know how that sounds, but once we got to talking, we just couldn't stop. And we told each other so many things about ourselves. And he was so charismatic and so funny. And I got to know all of these really deep personal things about himself, right? He told me about how his dad had just passed a couple years prior and how he really missed him and like what grieving his dad was like. He told me about his tough upbringing and that he grew up in a really rough area and that unfortunately he got involved with the Bloods, a gang, how he got stabbed into the Bloods. He told me that when he was really young, like around 9 or 12 years old, him and his best friend were at a gas station, and for whatever reason, when they left the gas station, the police started chasing them, and the police ended up shooting his best friend, and he held his best friend while he bled to death, and how that weighs on him, and how he loves making music, and how that's his escape from everything, and how he wants to be just like his dad in that aspect, and just all of this really deep personal stuff. And I thought, wow, this guy is so amazing. Like, he's been through so much, he's had so many hardships, but he's still out here trying to make a name for himself, trying to move past all of that, and he's still just like such a light. He has so much positive energy. He's so funny and charismatic, and he's using his pain and turning it into art. On top of being really open with me and telling me all of these things about himself, he was also really good at listening and asking me questions. Like, at one point he said, "Hey, what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you?" And I said, "I don't know, probably the time that I got targeted by a PDF when I was 6." And I told him the story about that, and he listened and asked questions. And then I said, "How about you? What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you?" And he said, "Probably when I went on a run at Hoover Dam and I passed this guy who had a and I thought he was going to use it on me, but he looked at me, turned it on himself, and used it on himself." And I said, "Oh my God, that's horrible that you had to witness that. Did you call the cops?" And he said, "No, I just ran away." He even ended up talking about our exes, right? I talked about Eric and why our relationship had ended, and he talked to me about his ex and how their relationship ended and how it was his fault. And he like took full responsibility for that and said they still had contact with one another, and she even knew that he was on this date tonight, and she had asked if I was pretty, and he said yes. He was very honest with me about not really looking for anything serious. He was hoping to still get back with his ex at some point. He was hoping he would be able to fix it, and I told him I was in the same boat. I wanted to get back with my ex. It was just my ex's job to take the initiative to fix things. And so we kind of had an agreement that like we're kind of just bridging the gap, you know? Like we're hanging out, but we know that nothing serious is probably gonna come from this. And I really appreciated his honesty and his candor. I saw it as a huge green flag at the time, and I was really excited to see him again. Once again, please comment any of the red flags that you're picking up on, make predictions for the rest of the series. If you've watched my series on him in the past, you might be picking up on some things already, but tune in for part 5.